What's going on, guys? Tails86 here with Week 3 Review, and today we're going to review Bit Trip Saga for the Nintendo 3DS. Now, there were two games made from Axis and Gaijin, this one and Bit Trip Complete. Now, if you were able to pick up this one, you would have some fun because it was a great portable game, but it had some problems. But let's go ahead and talk about those problems in the review. Okay, guys, so this is the main menu for Bit Trip Saga. You have your 6 games laid down here on your touchscreen. You have Beat, Core, Void, Runner, Fate, and Flux. Now, each of these games are all rhythm-based games, but also some of them have certain varieties. Like Fate, instead of it being how like Runner is a platformer. Fate is basically a rail shooter. But we'll go ahead and go through each of them as we do the review. So let's go ahead and start first with Bit Trip Beat. Okay, so this is Bit Trip Beat. Now, the way that this game works is exactly like a mix between Res and Pong. So basically, the object of the game is to move your paddle across all these blocks, matching with the beat, and trying to get them before they pass through you. So, seems pretty simple, but trust me, it does get very competitive. Otherwise, though, it's a very unique game. It has some great replay value because it's got some amazing music from some amazing chiptune artists, as well as many of the other Bit Trip games, but we'll go through each of them at a time. As you can see, I'm doing pretty good so far, but it's going to start getting much harder, much quicker. Now, as you play, and each one of these dots that you hit, you'll gain a increase here for your score. Like, say I have right now 50. And these dots will start going much faster, and you'll be having to reach into like getting almost 100 of them at a time. So you'll want to keep your eye on everything that's going on the screen. And you have two different control schemes that you can use for this. You can use either the touch screen, which is what I'm using, or you can use the analog stick. Now, I prefer that you do not use the analog stick because it has just some things about it that don't really work too well with this game. It's a little bit too sensitive for my taste. But otherwise, I mean, if you want to have something fun, this is definitely one of the funner ones on the game. So, let's go ahead and now take a look at Bit Trip Core. Now, the objective with Bit Trip Core is instead of you being able to use a Pong paddle, you are using what is called the core ship, which is this little plus right here. You use the plus to be able to aim at the dots that come at you, coming from 4 different angles, coming from up, down, left, and right. Now, the way that it is, it's very simple to do, but one of the things that I would recommend is that you keep your eyes very closely on the screen, because sometimes they will go so fast that you're not expecting them to go as fast as they do. But it looks pretty simple, at least when you first start out. But I tell you again, the Bit Trip series is a very hard series, but it's a fun one. But it's pretty simple, just using the D-pad and then pressing on the A button. And you get to listen to some killer chiptune music. So far we're doing pretty good. Now, you also have a bomb technique that you can use whenever you hit a certain amount of these, and you'll get over the next level, which is when you start off at Hyper, then you'll go to Mega, Super, Ultra, and then Extra. Just like the same thing with the other games. So you'll want to make sure that you try to reach into the next level. And then the game starts picking up on the beat, and then the difficulty as well. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at Bit-Trip Void. Alright, so now let's check out some Bit-Trip Void. Now this one is actually a very fun one. You use the analog stick to be able to move your character around, which is the void. And then all you have to do is collect the black dots and stay away from the white ones. And when you do that, you will increase not only your void that you created, but you will need to pop it to be able to get further in the game. So now, let's go ahead and show off some Bit-Trip Void. So as you can see, we're going to do it with the analog stick. And it's going to tell us to make sure we grab the black ones and stay away from the white ones. As you can see, they have that big old red mark saying, "No, do not touch us." Now you can also pop your void by pressing on the A button, which I have to say, this one is one of the most best controlled games for the Bit-Trip series. And it's not as hard as Core and Beat are, but it does still have a great difficulty. And has some great music as well. The whole entire Bit-Trip series has a great music, so it doesn't matter which one you go with. My personal favorite still of all time will always be Bit-Trip Runner, which I also did a review of that, so if y'all would like to take a look at a review of it, please do. It's also on my website, or on my YouTube website, but whatever. So, just make sure that whenever you're playing this, one of the things I will say about the whole entire collection is you will not want to use the 3D features. And I'll actually go ahead and mention that later on when we get to the other games. But otherwise, this is pretty much all you do. But it does get very quick. Does not get very quick. It gets very competitive, again, very quickly. So you'll want to keep your eye on everything that's going on. And you'll want to make sure that you pop yourself every so often before you get hit by one of those white dots. And try not to miss them, but it's easy to miss. Especially when you're playing and using a camera at the same time. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at Bit-Trip Runner. Okay, now the way to play Bit-Trip Fate is basically, it's a rail shooter. You use the touchscreen to be able to move your character around, and then you also, to shoot, you use the touchscreen, and then you use the analog stick to move around, which you would think would be pretty simple to do. Now, y'all probably can't really see much of a difference, but this is with the 3D turned on, and, I mean, it looks okay. I'm not gonna lie, it looks okay, but to me, between all of the games, Bit-Trip Runner was the one that really got hurt, mostly with the 3D feature. Now that's not to say though that even with the 3D feature that this is a bad game. I'm not saying that one bit. It's just something that they could have easily fixed, and I just feel like they kind of rushed the game. And of course not doing like how I did, just dying like that. But the way that you basically do the game is, we're going to turn that 3D off actually, is basically just moving Commander Video with the controls pad and moving him across the rail and shooting each of the enemies. Now the thing though is on the touchscreen, it's actually a lot harder than a lot of people think. Having to use the control pad at the same time and using a touchscreen too. Unless if you're really good right-handed, then you can try it that way. But I'm a left-hander, so it's a little bit harder for me. But this is still a good game. I mean, in no way is it a bad game. But there are just some things about this one I just didn't like. I was expecting more of like just a regular shooter. But basically, the way that you go ahead and go through the levels is to just take out the enemies and then pick up the blocks. Or, the plus. The pluses to be able to get your character Commander video up and to be able to use extra power-ups, like being able to use different characters. Like right here we have Meat Boy. Now though, again, remember that you can only do a few of these guys at a time, but when you go through each of these stages, you have to take out a certain amount of these guys, and it can get hard. It can get very hard very quickly. Even though it doesn't look like it's that hard, trust me, it is actually a lot harder than it looks. But then plus the thing I also find that's interesting about this game is the 3D again has major problems. They're not extremely major problems, it's just a thing that could have easily been fixed if they did not rush the game, and I just feel that they rushed it. But anyway, let's go now and head over to the last game of the series, Bit Trip Flux. So it is now time for the last game of the series, which is Bit Trip Flux. Now again, just like I said before, in Bit Trip Fate, you can either use the analog stick or you can use the touch screen. Again, I suggest if anybody picks up this game to use the touch screen because it works much better than the analog stick. Now, this is exactly like Bit Trip Beat, except it does have a little bit more of a difficulty. But you will find bonuses in each portion of the stage, and just like in Beat, whenever you beat a portion of the level, you will go through and be able to gain a new level. Instead of being Hyper, you'll be either Mega, Super, Ultra, or Extra. And the same people who did the first remix for the Bit Trip Beat game are back as well to be able to win your hearts again with their amazing soundtrack as well. But the entire series I'm going to have to give on this game a 7 out of 10. Now the reason I'm giving it a 7 is because the no add-on features like online, there was no online added to this. And I'm actually very disappointed in that because even the Wii version got add-on content. Or not add-on content, excuse me, but add-on like online features and stuff, which couldn't have been hard for this game to be put on there. It just seems like to me they kind of rushed the game, and I was expecting a lot more from a great game like Bit Trip Beat, or excuse me, the entire Bit Trip series I should say. But otherwise, the game is still good. Even if it's getting a 7, it's still very good. And it's a hard game though. So if you like really hard games, and if you want something that'll really challenge you, Bit Trip Beat will be one of them. So guys, thank you very much for watching this review of Bit Trip Saga. And if you enjoyed the review, I hope you also go ahead and try out the game on either the 3DS or the Nintendo Wii. And as always guys, take care. Later.